welcome to the unholy script. The road to the old Hawthorne property was little more than a ribbon of cracked asphalt swallowed by the woods. The dying daylight stretched long shadows across the windshield, each tree bending toward the road as if trying to whisper a warning. Evan Clark gripped the steering wheel tighter than necessary. The hum of his aging sedan filled the silence, but nothing could drown out the memory of that address printed on every newspaper headline a year ago. 3 missing, family vanishes without a trace. He had sold them that house. He told himself this trip was professional, an inspection for the bank, a courtesy call, maybe even a way to prove to himself that what happened wasn't his fault. But the truth itched behind every rational excuse. He'd lied on the original inspection. Cracks in the foundation, moisture damage in the walls, things he'd smoothed over for a faster commission. Now, as his headlights cut through the mist, the house appeared at the end of the road like it had been waiting for him. The Victorian silhouette loomed against the twilight, its windows reflecting nothing. The "Sold by Evan Clark" sign still hung beside the driveway, warped from rain, the letters faded. The wooden post leaned slightly, groaning each time the wind passed through. He parked at the gate but didn't get out immediately. The air felt heavier here, like the space around the house held its breath. His phone had no signal. Typical, he thought, though the thought didn't calm him. When he finally stepped out, gravel crunched beneath his shoes, the sound absurdly loud in the stillness. The front porch sagged beneath his weight as he climbed the steps. The door stood half open, the keyhole black and empty. He could smell the damp, the old wallpaper glue, something faintly metallic beneath it all. He hesitated, glancing at the doorframe. It had been forced open at some point. Maybe vandals, maybe police, maybe something else. He stepped inside. The air was colder than it should have been, though it was early autumn. Dust drifted lazily through the beam of his flashlight. Furniture still stood where the family had left it. A half-collapsed couch, children's shoes near the stairs, a picture frame lying face down on the floor. He bent to pick it up. The photo showed the missing family, a man, a woman, and their little girl, smiling awkwardly in front of this very house. But something about their eyes unsettled him. The father's eyes especially seemed to be looking past the camera, toward someone standing behind it. A soft creak echoed from upstairs. Evan froze. Then came the faintest sound, a breath. Maybe, or a laugh, the kind of laugh that children make when they're playing hide and seek. His flashlight trembled slightly as he lifted it toward the staircase. The beam stopped at the landing, and for a fraction of a second, he thought he saw someone's small hand slip out of view. The house seemed to breathe in. Evan whispered, almost without realizing it, "Hello?" The house exhaled, the wind through broken glass, and the "Sold by Evan Clark" sign outside rattled as if answering him. The wind whispered his name. Evan's footsteps echoed through the empty hallway like an accusation. Every creak of the floorboards seemed to mimic the rhythm of his heart. Unsteady, guilty, loud. He moved deeper into the house, telling himself it was just his imagination, that the sound he'd heard upstairs was a draft, a shifting floor, or maybe a bird trapped in the attic. Anything but what it really sounded like. The beam of his flashlight swept across the peeling wallpaper. It used to be floral, something cheerful and delicate, but now the pattern bled into decay. He brushed his hand across it, feeling damp spots spreading beneath the surface. Water damage. Exactly the kind he'd hidden in his inspection report. He remembered the buyer asking, "You're sure it's safe?" And how easily he'd smiled and said, "Absolutely." The lie still tasted metallic in his mouth. A faint sound drifted down the staircase, a soft tapping, like small feet running across hardwood. Evan froze and turned off his flashlight. The house fell into a thick, almost living darkness. The only light came from the half-shuttered windows where moonlight cut the dust. In narrow strips, he listened. The tapping stopped. Then, A low giggle. A child's laugh. Short, quick, unmistakable. Evan swallowed hard, his throat dry. He forced a nervous laugh. "All right," he muttered to no one. "You've got mice." "Lots of mice." But the sound came again, closer this time, from the next room. He followed it into the dining area, where the long table still stood beneath a chandelier hanging by a single chain. A child's toy, a small wooden horse, sat in the center of the table. Its paint was chipped, one leg broken. He didn't remember seeing it when he came in. When he stepped closer, the air around the table shifted. The chandelier swayed faintly, though no breeze touched it. The toy horse began to move, rocking back and forth, slowly, as if pushed by an invisible hand. Evan's breath caught. "Hello?" he said again, quieter this time. "Is someone here?" Silence. Then a voice, faint, almost playful, but layered with something hollow underneath. "You sold us this place, remember?" The flashlight slipped from his hand and hit the floor, the beam rolling across the walls. For a split second, the light caught something. A figure in the hallway. Small. Still. When he blinked, it was gone. Evan grabbed the flashlight, his pulse hammering in his ears. "Who's there?" He barked, louder than he meant to. His own voice sounded foreign, bouncing back from the walls, distorted by the emptiness. Then above him, footsteps again, slow, deliberate now. Moving toward the stairs, he aimed the light upward. At the top of the staircase, a small shadow paused. Framed in the gloom dot, it tilted its head slightly. Like a child studying a stranger, then it ran fast, disappearing into the dark. Evan's trembling hand tightened around the flashlight. He should have turned around, walked out, driven away. But guilt anchors a man harder than fear ever can. And something in that laugh told him the house wasn't finished with him yet. "You sold us this place, remember?" A small voice whispered from the dark hallway. Evan's flashlight flickered as he reached the study at the end of the hall, the only room that hadn't been covered in dust. The door creaked open to reveal a small office space frozen in time. A single desk sat near the window, and papers were scattered across it as if someone had left in a hurry. The air here smelled faintly of burnt paper and old varnish. He hesitated before stepping in. The temperature dropped sharply, his breath turning faintly visible. The house groaned, not the random settling of old wood, but a low, deliberate sound, like something breathing through the walls. He noticed something on the desk, a folder, damp and swollen from humidity. Across the top was written in faded ink, "Closing documents, Hawthorne Estate." Evan's chest tightened. He had left the original paperwork at his office a year ago. There was no way this should be here. He flipped it open. The first page was the inspection report, his inspection report, with his signature neatly printed at the bottom. But the details were wrong. In the margins, someone had scribbled phrases in handwriting identical to his. "You knew it wasn't safe. You said it would hold. You promised." The next page was the property deed. His name appeared again, not as the seller's agent this time, but as the owner. Beneath his signature was a clause he didn't remember writing. "Upon the weight of guilt fulfilled, ownership transfers. Payment accepted in full." He stared at the words until the ink seemed to move, the letters crawling slightly across the page, rearranging themselves. His pulse thundered in his ears. He turned the next sheet. It was a photograph, a blurry image of the family that vanished. Only now, in this version, he was standing beside them, one hand on the father's shoulder, smiling faintly. His heart stuttered. He dropped the photo and it slid across the desk, stopping at the edge. Somewhere upstairs, the floorboards creaked again, slow, deliberate steps moving toward the staircase. Evan fumbled for his phone. He needed to call someone, police, anyone. No signal. The screen glowed white, then black. A faint vibration buzzed in his hand. A message appeared. From unknown. He opened it. The text was only 3 words: "Welcome home, Evan." The screen went dark again. He stared at his reflection in the black glass, but it wasn't his face. The reflection was older, paler, hollow-eyed, like a man who hadn't slept in months. He dropped the phone. The house shuddered. The lights flickered once, twice, then went completely out. From the hallway came the faint scrape of metal, the sound of something being dragged slowly across the floorboards. He turned toward the door, but it closed before he could move. Slamming with the finality of a tomb, his flashlight went out. The darkness pressed close, warm and suffocating. As the voice, that same child's voice, whispered from just behind him, "You signed it, remember? It's yours now." And with that, the study door locked from the outside. The contract wasn't written in ink anymore, it was written in guilt. Evan stumbled out of the study, breath ragged, eyes wide with panic. The door behind him had somehow unlocked on its own, but he didn't question why. He only knew he needed to leave. The air in the hallway had grown heavier, almost wet, and every exhale came out as a trembling cloud. His flashlight flickered back to life for a moment, enough to show him the staircase leading down to the front door. He started toward it, trying to steady his breathing. Each step groaned under his weight, as though the house were protesting his movement. From somewhere above, the faint sound of a music box began to play, the same tune he'd heard faintly on his first visit a year ago, when the family moved in, only now it was off-key, dragging painfully between notes. "Stop it," he whispered under his breath, though he didn't know to whom. "Please just stop." The melody grew louder. The air buzzed with static, the hum of unseen electricity pulsing through the floorboards. He reached the front door and grabbed the handle. It wouldn't move. He yanked harder. The knob was ice cold, slick with moisture. He pulled again. This time the handle came off in his hand. The door remained closed. Then, one by one, the house's lights flickered on. The hallway lamps glowed first, bathing the room in a sickly yellow light. Then the living room. Then the dining area. Finally, the upstairs rooms. Each bulb hummed faintly as if the house itself was waking up, and in every lit window, a silhouette appeared. In the living room window, the tall shape of a man, shoulders squared. In the kitchen, the outline of a woman holding something in her arms. In the upstairs window, a smaller figure, head tilted as if staring straight at him. Evan's breath caught. "No," he whispered. He backed away, tripping over the edge of the rug. His phone buzzed again in his pocket. He didn't want to look, but he did. The screen showed a photo that hadn't existed seconds ago. Him standing in front of the house, smiling. Behind him, faintly visible in the window, were the same 3 silhouettes. The image changed on its own. His reflection faded, replaced by the missing family's faces, lifeless, gray, watching. The overhead lights flickered again. He looked up. At the top of the stairs, something was waiting. The child. The same small figure he'd seen earlier. She stood still, head tilted slightly to one side, her face just out of view. Evan's voice cracked. "I'm sorry." The girl's head straightened. Her voice, faint, broken, carried down the stairs. "We believed you." Then, one by one, the lights went out from the attic down. Darkness swallowed the house until only the front porch light remained. It flickered weakly, then died. When morning came, the property sat silent again, untouched by time. A new "for sale" sign had appeared overnight. Bright and freshly painted, the agent's name read, Clark Realty. No one in town remembered who that was. The house had a new owner now, and it never let its owners leave. The Arctic was the kind of silence that made people lose their sense of time, an endless white that devoured all sound and thought. Dr. Mara Lynn had spent 6 seasons up here, charting the movement of a melting glacier no one but scientists cared about. She told herself it was noble work, mapping the collapse of something ancient, but deep down, It was about escape. The ice didn't talk back. It didn't judge her. It didn't ask why she never went home. But that night, the ice finally answered. Her research outpost was little more than a prefab steel cabin buried in snow, lit by a single hanging bulb that swayed when the wind howled. The generators hummed in a steady rhythm outside, the only sign of life in miles. She sat at her desk, headphones on, replaying the data feed from the acoustic sensors they'd planted 60 meters deep in the glacier. It started as usual, the familiar groans of shifting ice, the low-frequency moans of frozen earth cracking under pressure. But then something new crept in, faint, delicate, rhythmic. She leaned closer. It wasn't a geological sound. It had structure. She scrubbed the audio back and forth, isolating the strange tone, amplifying it through the lab's old speakers. The sound wavered, fluttering like a human voice buried beneath static. A breath, then a murmur, then words. Double quotes. Let me finish. Her hands froze over the keyboard. She increased the gain. The voice grew clearer, though still distant, distorted as if carried through miles of frozen air. My story. Mara stared at the waveform. The cadence was off, broken, but undeniably human. Her first instinct was rational, radio interference maybe. Some stray transmission bleeding through from a ship, or a long-wave frequency bouncing weirdly off the polar atmosphere. She'd heard stranger things out here, but her second instinct, the one that crawled beneath her ribs, told her otherwise. She hit record, set a marker on the timeline, and ran a voice identification sample. The software analyzed the frequencies, translating the vibration patterns into visual peaks. The reading appeared on screen, a vocal signature profile. Her stomach tightened. The shape of the waveform was familiar. Too familiar. She loaded her own voice sample, an old recording from a field log she'd made the week before. Her voice reading coordinates, tone crisp, emotionless. The AI overlaid the two waveforms. Match, 96%. She blinked, then again. The number didn't change. Her rational mind kicked in. Coincidence, she whispered. Similar frequency range, same equipment pickup, artifact distortion. She tried to convince herself of it, but the words felt weak. Then the voice came again, louder now, directly through the speakers, not from the playback file. Leave. Mara. Her name. Spoken slowly. Icy breath curling through the static. She ripped off the headphones, heart pounding. The speakers still hissed faintly. Outside, the wind screamed against the steel walls, shaking the outpost like something massive had brushed past. Her eyes drifted to the ice core sample by the door, a translucent cylinder resting in a containment unit. Inside, deep in the frozen blue, a shadow moved just a fraction, as if something beneath the surface had turned its head. The whisper rose again, clearer this time. Let me finish my story. Dr. Mara Lynn didn't sleep that night. The whisper had lodged itself inside her mind like a splinter. Every time she closed her eyes, she heard it again, that strange, breathy voice weaving through the static, repeating those 5 words. Let me finish my story. By morning, her rationality had returned, or so she told herself. She brewed burnt coffee over the gas stove and replayed the audio on her laptop, volume low, trying to find a flaw. A feedback loop, maybe. Faulty calibration. A trick of harmonics. She even checked the cables, hands trembling as she traced the wires from the recorder to the monitor. Nothing was wrong. Every piece of equipment functioned perfectly. Her assistant, Leo, a young graduate researcher with the patience of a monk, walked in rubbing his eyes. Still at it? He mumbled. Yeah, she said too quickly. Picked up an anomaly in the ice shelf's subharmonic frequency. Just background resonance. Leo raised an eyebrow. Background resonance doesn't call your name. She froze. What? He pointed to her laptop. The waveform display still pulsed faintly. He must have heard it too. Mara forced a thin smile. You probably caught me replaying logs. Go get breakfast." He shrugged and left, leaving her in the cold hum of machinery. The moment the door clicked shut, she hit record again. She connected directly to the sensors buried deep beneath the glacier, tuning the gain past the recommended limit. The speakers crackled, screeching under the strain. Then, the sound came through. A voice, low and drawn out, like something frozen learning how to speak again. Mara. It wasn't a perfect copy of her voice now. It was her voice aged, rasping, tired, echoing through layers of ice and time. The distortion made it worse, as if the voice was struggling to remember what it meant to be alive. "I can't finish," it said. "Not until you listen." She pressed stop. The silence that followed was suffocating. Her heart hammered in her throat. This couldn't be real. She ran the voice match program again. 98%. Identical timbre. Identical frequency pattern. Not interference. Not crossfeed. Not humanly possible. The wind outside howled across the tundra. The sound made the metal walls groan, but under it she swore she could hear something else. Faint knocking, rhythmic, coming from below. She stepped to the floor vent. The knocking stopped. Then a faint tapping came from the sample freezer instead. Her pulse spiked. She crossed the room, each step heavy in the freezing air. The ice core tube sat under the fluorescent light, pale blue, crystalline, beautiful. But now there were hairline cracks spreading through it. Tiny fissures. She leaned close, breath fogging the glass. Something inside shifted again. A small pocket of air bubbled toward the surface. And just before it reached the top, she heard it. A whisper, muffled but unmistakable. "I'm almost through." Mara stumbled back, knocking over her coffee. The mug shattered, liquid hissing against the floor heater. Her laptop pinged, an alert. The file she'd been analyzing had rewritten itself. The title bar now read, "My Story" by M. Lin. The whispering voice spoke her name again, but this time it sounded impatient. By the third night, Mara had stopped pretending she was doing research. Her log entries had turned into journal confessions, time-stamped fragments of an unraveling mind. The voice is female. It mimics me, but slower. I think it's learning how to speak through the ice. Each line trembled with obsession, disguised as science. Leo noticed the change. He caught her whispering to the speakers during her late shifts, her face inches from the static. "You're talking back to it," he said one morning, voice cautious, like speaking to someone standing too close to a cliff. "It's a feedback pattern," she replied without looking up. "Echoes don't talk back. They complete unfinished sounds." He frowned. "Echoes don't say your name either." That night, she worked alone. The storm outside buried the station under a fresh blanket of snow. The wind howled against the walls, but her attention was locked on the monitor. The ice sensor's frequency had changed again, rhythmic pulses now, like a heartbeat buried deep below. She brought the mic closer to the speaker. "Who are you?" she whispered. The voice came back, faint and broken. "You were supposed to find me." Mara froze. Her breath fogged the air, the temperature in the lab suddenly dropping several degrees. The sensors spiked wildly on the screen. For the first time, the voice wasn't echoing, it was responding. She ran to the equipment locker, grabbed the portable drill, and suited up in her thermal gear. Leo had gone to the sleeping quarters, and she didn't want him to stop her. She had to know what was under there. The coordinates from the sensor logs led half a mile out, near a fracture in the ice shelf. The night swallowed her whole as she stepped outside. The wind screamed through the ridges, carrying shards of ice that stung her face. The aurora shimmered faintly on the horizon, its green light flickering across the frozen wasteland. She followed the beacons she'd planted earlier, small blue LEDs blinking weakly under the snow, until she reached the site. The drill bit into the surface with a deafening shriek. Ice dust blew into her face as she worked, each layer colder and denser than the last. After 40 minutes, the drill hit something softer, a hollow pocket. The sound echoed differently now, almost human. She peered into the opening. Shining her headlamp down at first, she thought it was just a trick of light, the way shadows warped through translucent layers. But as the frost cleared, a face emerged, pale, perfectly preserved. Eyes closed. And it was hers, not just a resemblance, it was her. The same scar above the brow. The same faint mole near the lip. The same expression she wore in every passport photo. Tired, detached, her knees buckled. The wind roared, but all she could hear was her heartbeat, and beneath it, the whisper. "If you dig me out." The headlamp flickered. The frozen lips twitched. "You take my place." The ice cracked beneath her boots. The fissure spread fast, a sharp line darting toward her feet. She stumbled back, gasping. As the face beneath the ice opened its eyes, dull and colorless, staring straight up at her dot, then the voice came again, louder this time, echoing from every direction. "Finish my story." Mara's scream was swallowed by the wind, and the glacier echoed it back in her own voice. When the rescue team arrived 3 weeks later, the research station looked untouched, perfectly preserved under a sheet of frozen silence. The wind had sealed every footprint, every sign of movement. From above, it was just another white speck in the endless Arctic void. They found Leo first. He was huddled near the communications console, frostbitten but alive, staring blankly at the dead monitors. He wouldn't respond when they asked questions, only whispered one phrase again and again. "She's still in there." But it's not her. Inside the lab, the equipment was still running. The generator hummed weakly, the lights flickering in rhythm with the static hiss of the speakers. The voice recorder displayed an active timer, still recording, non-stop, for 19 days straight. The waveform scrolled slowly across the screen, pulsing like a heartbeat. The lead investigator, Dr. Haney, pressed play. At first, only silence. Then, a faint breath. "Mara?" Someone whispered on the tape, Leo's voice. Then another voice answered, soft and drawn out, echoing through what sounded like solid ice. "Please, stop recording." Anne frowned. The voice didn't match Leo's tone or accent. It was colder, rasping, almost hollow. The recording ended with a sharp crack, followed by what sounded like rushing water, or a deep exhale. In the back of the lab, one of the containment freezers stood open. Inside was an empty cylinder, shards of cracked ice pooled at the bottom like broken glass. The walls around it were damp, a sign of thawing that shouldn't have been possible in sub-zero temperatures. The team spread out, checking the perimeter. The door to the outside had been forced open from within, the hinges warped. A trail of frozen droplets led a few meters out into the snow before abruptly stopping. No footprints, no drag marks, just nothing. Leo sat by the door, mumbling. "She said it wasn't her voice anymore," he whispered. "She said it was older, tired, like something trapped too long." And he examined the recorder again. He pressed rewind, scrolling back to the first night of the logs. The voice began faint, then clearer, growing stronger with each passing day, until, in the final entry, it spoke in perfect clarity. "I can't feel the cold anymore. Maybe I'm not supposed to. It's so bright down here. The ice reflects everything, even the parts of me I tried to bury. If anyone hears this, don't follow my signal. It's not a call for help. It's an invitation." The team exchanged uneasy glances. The last few seconds of the tape played. There was a quiet sob, then a deep inhale, like someone taking their last breath underwater. Then, softly, almost tenderly, the voice said, "I'm free now." Anne stopped the recording. The silence that followed was suffocating. Outside, one of the crew shouted for him to come look. A few meters beyond the station, under the translucent surface of newly frozen ice, something was visible. A pale outline, suspended perfectly beneath the surface. A woman's face. Eyes closed. Peaceful dot when Anne bent closer. The eyes snapped open, and from the recorder on the table, Mara's voice whispered one final time, exhausted, pleading, "Please, stop recording." Her voice still echoes beneath the ice, tired, patient, waiting for someone else to listen. The rain hadn't stopped for 3 days. It came down in sheets that blurred the neon signs and turned the city into a reflection of itself. Lights bleeding into puddles, colors melting into black water. Jonas Vale walked through the old quarter with his hood pulled tight, a man moving through memory more than weather. His wife, Ilara, had been gone for almost a year. Some days it felt like she'd only just left the room. Other days like she'd never existed at all. He told himself he was just walking to clear his head. But grief has a way of guiding the lost to strange places. The street twisted into a narrow alley he didn't remember. One of those old cobblestone corridors, lined with crooked lamps and stalls that looked like they'd been there since time began. Most were closed, shutters rattling in the wind. All but one. A single market stall stood at the far end, lit by a lantern whose flame didn't flicker in the rain. The vendor, an elderly woman wrapped in layers of gray, watched him approach with an expression that was neither welcoming nor wary. Just expectant. Jonas hesitated under the awning. The smell of melted wax and damp earth filled the air. Dozens of candles lined the table. Tall, short, twisted, some shaped like human figures, others dripping crimson wax down black spines. None of them burned normally. A few smoked without flame. Others burned sideways, the wax rising against gravity. He tried to sound casual. "You're open late." Her eyes lifted to meet his, sharp, colorless, ancient. "Some things sell better after dark." He glanced at the candles again. "You sell these?" She nodded. "Each one remembers something." He frowned. "Remembers?" The woman picked up a slender ivory candle and held it to the lantern. The flame leapt across on its own, flickering in reverse. The wax climbed upward, unmelting, reforming itself into pristine shape. The wick grew longer instead of shorter. Jonas blinked, convinced it was a trick of the light. "This one," she said softly, "can undo a day." He almost laughed. "Undo? Light it with intention," she murmured, setting it back on the table, "and the hours will turn back. But only one day. And only once." Jonas stared at her, half intrigued, half disgusted by how much he wanted to believe her. "And what's the price?" She smiled faintly. "Memory always costs something. Sometimes it takes what you love least. Sometimes what you love most." He swallowed hard. Rain hissed on the lantern glass. "What if," he asked, voice quiet, "what if the day I want to undo is the day my wife died?" The woman didn't answer right away. She only reached into a drawer beneath the stall and wrapped the candle in black paper. "Then light it," she said, placing it in his hands, "and be careful what you wish unlived." When Jonas looked up, ready to ask another question, the woman was gone. The lantern still burned, but the stall behind it was empty, nothing but rain-soaked cobblestone and a faint scent of wax. He looked down at the candle in his palm. It was warm. The wick began to glow faintly on its own, burning backward, as if time itself had just drawn its first breath. Jonas returned home soaked, the candle wrapped carefully in his coat pocket. The apartment felt colder than usual, hollow without Ilara's laughter filling the corners. He set the package on the kitchen counter, staring at it like it might vanish if he looked away. His fingers trembled as he unwrapped the black paper. The candle was thin, elegant, ivory white, but already unnerving. The wax looked impossibly smooth, as if untouched by time, yet the wick seemed to breathe, curling slightly, stretching upward instead of downward. Jonas's heartbeat quickened. He remembered the day clearly. He could replay it over and over, the squeal of brakes, the shattering glass, the frantic heartbeat he never managed to catch in time. And now the flame promised a strange reprieve, the chance to take it all back. He placed the candle in the middle of the kitchen table, lit it with a trembling match, and watched. The flame ignited normally, small and steady. Then, impossibly, it began to retreat, climbing the wick, reforming the wax as it went. Shadows recoiled along the walls, stretching and twisting backward. Time itself seemed to hiccup in the room. Jonas blinked, and suddenly it was morning. The sunlight poured in through the window, only it wasn't today's sunlight. It was the morning of the accident. He could hear the distant hum of traffic outside, the same as it had been that day. His heart leaped. He ran to the living room. Elara was there, alive, smiling, the way she always had before tragedy struck. She held her coffee cup with one hand, brushing her hair behind her ear, unaware of the storm Jonas had just reversed. "Jonas?" she said, looking up. Her voice was soft, warm. He froze, tears stinging his eyes. He wanted to reach her, to hold her, to never let the past return. But the apartment felt wrong. Not sinister exactly, but like a photograph someone had colored backward. The ticking of the clock ran in reverse. A cup fell off the counter and returned to its place mid-air, spilling nothing. Even the sunlight seemed hesitant, unsteady. He realized then that he wasn't just rewinding time. He was slipping into it, living the day over, literally. And with each passing hour, Elara remained perfect, unchanged, while he alone carried the memory of the tragedy. Aware of the invisible line between what had happened and what might be undone, he tried to speak to her casually, to act normal, but she looked at him strangely, as if sensing that something was off. "Jonas, you've been quiet this morning. Are you all right?" A shiver ran down his spine. This day was alive and it remembered him. The candle on the table burned backward still, wax climbing as though it were alive. Jonas realized with a sinking dread that the moment he blew it out, he would return to the present, and nothing would have changed outside the fragile bubble he had stepped into. The possibility of failure weighed on him. Failure meant losing her again, but the temptation was irresistible. His hand hovered over the flame, poised between hope and fear. The candle flickered in reverse, and with it, Jonas's chance to undo the unthinkable. But every heartbeat whispered, "Are you ready to live the consequences?" Jonas lit the candle every night. At first, it was miraculous. The day he had lost Elara replayed before him, each second malleable, each choice reversible. He could avoid the mistakes, sidestep the hazards, whisper warnings he never had the courage to speak. Her laugh returned to him, bright and delicate, the warmth of her hand in his. Every night, he fell asleep beside her as though nothing had ever happened. But miracles have a cost. The first change was subtle. Her voice, once vivid and familiar, began to falter. In mid-sentence, a syllable would stutter, her tone wavering as if she were remembering her words for the first time. Jonas noticed it but ignored it, telling himself it was exhaustion, the strain of living the same day over and over. Then her movements slowed, just slightly. She reached for the coffee cup and missed it by a fraction, blinked twice at the same moment, paused mid-step. He laughed it off. "You're just distracted," he whispered, trying to comfort himself as much as her. Night after night, the inconsistencies multiplied. Her smiles became faintly hollow, her eyes glimmering with something unplaceable, a sadness he didn't remember from the past. A quiet resignation that pressed against the edges of his perfect day. Jonas refused to stop. He feared letting the day end without her alive. He refused to let the real world return. He lit the candle again and again, tracing backward over every moment, rewinding time until every choice was perfect, and every night she changed a little more. One evening, as the candle burned upward, Jonas reached for her hand. It was cold, colder than the real world had ever allowed, like she had already been extinguished. Her eyes met his, tired and aware. "You've done this too many times," she whispered. Her words were slow, deliberate, yet distant. "You already traded me once." Panic clutched at him. "What do you mean?" "I saved you. I brought you back." "No," she said, voice soft but firm. "Every time you undo a day, it's not me who returns. It's a memory of me. A shadow. I fade a little each time." He stared at her, realization cutting deeper than grief ever could. Each rewind was not giving him her, it was taking her away. Slowly, irreversibly, the real Ilara was vanishing from the world, replaced by the fragile illusion of perfection he conjured. The candle's flame climbed higher. Wax reforming, the smell of smoke rising against the reverse burn. Jonas shook it frantic. He wanted to stop, but he couldn't. He was addicted to the illusion, the chance to hold what he had lost. And with the last night of his obsession, he realized the truth. Time couldn't be undone. Love couldn't be preserved through magic. And grief could not be escaped by fire. He watched her eyes dim one final time, voice faint, almost a whisper. "You can't fix what was never broken." The candle's flame flickered upward, casting long shadows across the walls until the wax was gone, leaving only the fragile memory of what he had tried to reclaim. Jonas had burned the day backward to save her, but every wish came at a cost, and the price was the very life he thought he could restore. The morning after the last night, Jonas woke to silence. The apartment was exactly as it had been, except for the absence of the candle. The wick had vanished, leaving behind a faint scent of wax and smoke that lingered stubbornly in the air. The sunlight spilled over the counter, golden and ordinary. Mocking him with its normalcy, he stumbled to the kitchen, hoping, not daring, to see Ilara alive and vibrant, like the illusions he had chased for weeks. But she wasn't there. The coffee cup on the table was empty, the seat across from him bare. He called her name, each syllable echoing through the apartment like a hollow wind. Panic settled in his chest, heavy and cold. The reversal was gone. He had played with time like it was a toy, and now reality had reasserted itself. Every night spent chasing an impossible past had undone her presence further, until only the memory remained, his own vivid and unbearable. But hers no longer tethered to the world. Jonas sank to the floor, heart hammering, fingers trembling. The apartment, once a sanctuary of grief and memory, felt alien. He remembered the market stall, the woman, her cryptic warning, "Be careful what you wish unlived." He had ignored it, thinking it was quaint superstition, a fairy tale for the desperate. Now he understood. The candle had not reversed death, it had borrowed life from reality itself, replacing it with an echo that could never survive. A sudden vibration startled him. His phone buzzed insistently on the counter. He grabbed it with shaking hands. The screen displayed a voicemail from Ilara's number. His stomach twisted. Hesitant, he pressed play. Her voice, unmistakable, full of life and warmth, filled the room. "Jonas, stop trying to fix what was never broken." His throat tightened. Her tone was patient, loving, yet there was an edge of something almost mournful, a warning embedded in every syllable. She continued, "You can't hold back time, and you can't rewrite grief. Let it be, let us be." The message ended. Silence returned, heavier than the stormy nights of his obsession. Jonas held the phone to his chest, tears streaming down his face, realizing with crushing clarity that he had lost himself more than he had ever lost her. His longing had blinded him, and in trying to preserve her, he had only created a hollow shadow that could never be real. He glanced around the apartment, eyes landing on the faint residue of wax on the counter. The smell lingered, a ghost of what had been, a reminder that magic always demands a price. Jonas swallowed hard, inhaling the sharp scent, and let the memory of the flame fade with the morning light. For the first time in months, he stepped outside. Rain still drizzled over the city, puddles reflecting the fractured neon glow. The world moved forward, indifferent, relentless, unaltered by the desperate wishes of a single man. He breathed deeply, feeling the weight of impossibility settle into something heavier. Something real, acceptance. The candle was gone, the day could not be undone. And Jonas finally understood, some losses are permanent, and some lessons burn hotter than any flame.